Hey, this is Jose from Florida Hood Blocks. This is my Rolls Royce. This is my lifestyle. Nah, just kidding, man. Look, this is Miami, guys. We're in Miami, Florida. Some of the best real estate in the country right here, pretty much. Okay, guys, today's video is the top 10 reasons that Miami is changing, and it is changing very fast. Number one is gentrification. Neighborhoods like Little Haiti, that used to be neighborhoods that were poor and filled with crime, are getting huge real estate developments. This is called gentrification, and it's happening all over Miami, and it's totally changing the cityscape of the city. Huge buildings are going up, and a lot of changes are coming with those buildings. So we're going to break it all down. Of course, gentrification has a lot of aspects to it, and it involves a bunch of other stuff. So it's just so you know, Miami is not the place that you remember it to be. A lot of stuff on the streets in Miami is changing, and gentrification is number one because it affects all these other things we're going to talk about today. So number one, definitely gentrification has arrived in Miami. Some people say it's good because it's making real estate be worth more money. The streets are a lot cleaner. And some people are like, hold on, Miami culture is dying. So let's get into this. The top 10 reasons why Miami is changing. Number one is gentrification. And number two is Venezuelans. The situation in Venezuela has really been horrible for the country, and many of the wealthy people in that country, and by the way, if you did not know this, Venezuela used to be the wealthiest country in all of Latin America, and a lot of those wealthy people relocated to Miami. They brought their money, they brought their wealth, and they brought their culture to Miami, and they have really changed the cityscape. They're having an economical and a cultural and musical influence in Miami, which is really great for the people of Miami to have all this money come in, and it's really sad for the people of Venezuela because they're having to leave their country, which is horrible. So number two, Venezuelans, and they are mostly centered around El Doral, which is a city that basically has become what it is today thanks to their community. It's basically like their little Havana or their little Haiti, their little Venezuela. So number two, Venezuelans. Number three, no more Cubans. On his last day in office, Barack Obama decided that there were already too many Cubans in Florida. Some people say it's because they were voting mostly Republican. We don't get into politics on this channel. We're just talking facts here. In his last day in office, Obama said no more Cubans, and he took away the law that allowed Cubans to get legal status just by coming to the United States, and that has really changed Miami. In Fort Myers, Florida, even like used car dealerships like Buy Here Pay Here's went out of business because so many of the customers were Cubans that come into the United States, and the first thing that they wanted was a Hummer or a Corvette or a Camaro or something like that. And this has really been good for Miami. It's been bad because they're losing the cultural influence, which we'll get into later on in the video, but it's good for Miami because it's been really hard to so many people that have third generation communism installed inside their brains, and when they come to Miami or the United States, they don't want to adapt to the system here, and it's really hard for them to learn because the mentality that they're coming here with is not really the mentality that it takes to be successful in this country. In other words, they are economically brainwashed, and they just don't understand how things work. Some people, like I said, I'm not taking sides on either of these things. I'm just giving you guys the raw facts, and the raw facts are that Cubans are no longer coming to Miami, and this has really had a change in the city. Some businesses like shipping and traveling to Cuba and used car lots have really struggled because of that. I personally will not be missing the Buy Here Pay Here lots. They can close down because they're a bunch of crooks. The amounts of Cubans that were coming not only into Miami but in Florida in general were constantly changing things as far as rental units getting filled, cars being sold, jobs. It had just a huge economical impact for Florida, and when that stopped, it definitely had a huge change. So you'll notice that Miami doesn't have that cultural influence coming from Cuba anymore, and that the Cubans that are here are definitely of a mindset of people who've been here for a while. They're thinking more real estate, investing, businesses. They're not thinking about getting a Hummer. So while people who sell used cars and gold chains will be missing these Cubans. Obama apparently won't. Number 4 is the death of Miami culture. No Cubans coming in. They really did a lot to bring in culture, music, and it's not just Cubans. Miami, you would hear music from Jamaica, from Haiti, from all the other Caribbean islands. In general, not just Cubans, but immigrants in general have stopped coming to the United States, and that was really important for Miami's culture because there'd be constantly an influx of cultures from the Caribbean and other parts of the world, Latin America, and with that culture stopping to come into Miami, Miami has become just like the rest of the United States. You know, like every island in the Caribbean has its own music. Haiti has compa. Jamaica has reggae and dancehall. Cuba has salsa. Dominican Republic has merengue. Puerto Rico has bachata. Even the small islands like Trinidad have soca. Every island has its own culture and its own music. However, the United States, from Alaska to New York to Los Angeles, every corner of the United States, there's rap and there's country and there's like 2 other things. And the whole United States is culturally the same exact thing. There's like Atlanta for rap and Nashville for country music and Los Angeles. That's like the culture, of the United States. There used to be so much coming into Miami culturally from all these places. And with the immigrants stopped coming here, that has really pretty much killed Miami culture because Miami culture was so dependent on all that flavor coming from all these other places. And now Miami has just become like another city in the United States. It's really lost a lot of its culture. And I think social media has also played into that, in that you no longer have to go somewhere to pick up their culture. Just the internet, social media has the whole world changed, and it's really affected. And I think it's taken away a lot from Miami culture. It's not so much. It's like if the culture itself got gentrified in Miami. So a lot of people say, hey, the culture in Miami is dying. And even Broward County, which was always been insignificant compared to Miami, a lot of artists came out of Broward County and are getting more popularity than artists from Miami. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of the culture has just shifted into Broward County and other parts of Florida, and Miami has just become kind of like everybody else. And the death of Miami culture, so some people are calling it. There have been people from Venezuela and Guatemala coming into Florida recently, but no disrespect, they have those 2 beautiful countries, 2 beautiful cultures, but they just don't have the cultural swing that Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and people from the islands did. And moving on to number 5 is safety. Miami has really become a much safer place. You don't see the large crowds. If you ever went to South Beach in 2007, 2008, people would literally be fighting outside on a rainy Thursday night at 7 in the morning, or 6 in the morning, or 3 in the morning. People were just out there. It's really become a lot safer, which has contributed to number 6, real estate. Miami real estate has really taken off because it's become safer, it's been gentrified, and it's become a better place to live. The days of punching a homeless person into somebody's Rolls Royce outside of a nightclub on a rainy Thursday night at 2 in the morning, all those days are gone. Even on a weeknight, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it's pretty much quiet out there. It's not what it used to be. And that's contributed to the real estate becoming more attractive. There's less crime. I don't know where the crime went. One of my YouTube followers, we were having this conversation about Miami, mentioned that a lot of the people are in jail. I also mentioned a lot of people got deported. So I don't know if it's the combination of jail, deportation, but they've definitely taken away the criminal element out of Miami, and it has become a more gentrified, quiet, calmer place where you could sit outside of a Starbucks and hear the traffic jam. Number 7, it's become a cleaner city too. The streets are really cleaned up. There's less pollution. There's still a lot of pollution, but they kind of got away with getting rid of the graffiti. The areas that were more graffitied out, they kind of gentrified the graffiti and turned it into part of the cityscape. And there's less garbage on the street. There's less gang graffiti and tagging. They've really done a good job of getting rid of that. And I think the city code has really been strict on buildings, where buildings have to be up to code, houses have to look a certain way, sheds have to be blah, 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 blah. All these rules and regulations have really made Miami a lot cleaner looking city as far as cityscape goes. The Dade County building code is not a joke. I worked in Dade County, and on top of the regular code, every sub-city, and there's a lot of cities in Miami-Dade County, if you didn't know that, has their own rules and regulations. You have to be an expert to know all the rules if you're putting up new buildings, so it's definitely not an amateur permitting process over there. You have to be a professional. If you're putting up a shed, there's a lot of regulations. If you're putting up a building, there's a lot of regulations. Then you have Category 5 hurricanes go through there, so everything's got to be strong, and that has really made Miami a better city. It's become a cleaner city, and they just keep crunching down on code violations and really cleaning up the city so that it looks more presentable. So number 7 and 8, they kind of go hand in hand. As the city's gotten stricter, it's made the real estate more expensive, it's made the area more attractive, and I think policing and getting rid of criminals, also as real estate's gotten more expensive, a lot of the poorer people have kind of left into other areas. So all these things kind of work together. Miami is a lot cleaner, a lot safer, and the real estate is really starting to pick up, and the poor people, criminals, and the illegals have really had to pick up and find somewhere else to live. Number 8 is English. People are actually having to talk English to get employment in Miami. That's a really good thing. You may have heard the case on the news about the lady at Taco Bell who tried to order something and nobody in the Taco Bell knew how to speak English. Everybody was like, oh, hey, nobody knew English. And I think that changed Miami. That particular thing changed Miami. If you go to a restaurant in Miami, your employees will know English. And if you speak to them in English, one time they will continue to speak to you in English even after you go back to speaking Spanish. So that's a great thing that the employers are telling people, hey, if a customer speaks English, only speak English to that customer. My wife is American. She has good Spanish, but at times they wouldn't even look at her or talk to her. It was a very rude thing. They would look at me and expect me to translate her order, or she wouldn't get service. So Miami's changing, and a lot of businesses have realized that, hey, it's just not right. You can't have a city in the United States where you don't speak English. It was in the way of progress, and it's been really smart that a lot of businesses have said, hey, you got to learn English. If you don't learn English, you're definitely not getting these jobs. And if you're an American person in Miami, that's a great thing for you. So don't be afraid of Miami. You don't need Spanish anymore. And that takes us right on to number 9. Now, I don't know what the statistics are to back up my claim, but if I'm not mistaken, there's a whole lot more American people in Miami, and you're going to start to see a lot more continue to come, especially as real estate and gentrification take over. And if you're not aware of this trend, you need to find out, because Miami is starting to become a much better place. When I say Miami, I'm not just talking about the city of Miami. I'm talking Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County. The Spanish people have really economically progressed a lot. Even some of the suburbs that used to be white have actually become Hispanic, and these are really nice suburbs. Country Club, some parts of Miami Lakes, a lot of areas that used to be not so much Hispanic. Hispanic people are moving into these areas, and they're just more economically mobile. So there are a lot of changes, and it is bringing a lot of American people. And I think with these changes, a lot of gentrification, the types of businesses that are going in, you're going to see a lot more American people moving into Miami. The Hispanic population that's there is more mature. They're understanding economics better. They're just doing a whole lot better than they were many years ago. They're more educated on the financial system of the United States. And with the stop of immigrants from other countries coming in, that keeps a lot of the more ignorant looking people that are just trying to figure out what life is about. And I'm not criticizing these people, but it's no lie that people that sell gold chains and use Hummers have really struggled now that there's less people coming that they can easily victimize economically. They're just more mature. It's not that these people were less smart or anything like that. It was just that they were not educated on how the financial system in the United States worked. They're learning, they're doing better, and it's making the whole area a lot better of a place. And really, it needs it. I mean, it's great to see people in the United States from other countries who came here with nothing start to have something. It's really nice for them. to be able to get that maturity economically. It's kind of like Pitbull is the perfect example. If you remember Pitbull, when he first started rapping, he was like, I'm selling dope on the street corner. And then he put on a jacket and shaved, and then he stopped wearing his hat backwards. And then he just became a more mature person, became more into business than rapping. And even his, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like Pitbull is what happened in Miami. Miami went from being on a street corner slanging dope to wearing a business suit talking about business. It happened to Pitbull, and it's happened to everybody else in Miami. People are just more mature, and it's changing the cityscape. It's changing everything in the city. It's changing, and for the better. And you also have to keep in mind that now those immigrants' children are Cuban American, and now they are like young adults, and they were born here. They're definitely not going to wear a guayabera and smoke a big tobacco. They're kind of more American. They're just not into that. They're different. They don't want to drink coffee and scream at the top of their lungs the way we do. They're a little bit more Americanized, and it's changing. Miami is going to become a more Americanized city, and even the immigrants that are there are becoming more American themselves. So that is definitely changing, and if you're into real estate investment, just look at the fact that some of these buildings that are going up in Miami, a lot of people are attracted to Naples and Venice and Sarasota, but from a real estate perspective, the investments that are going into Miami are not going into any other part of Florida. I just did a video of the largest project going on in Naples, Florida, and it's nothing. It's massive for Naples, but there's projects like this going all over Miami. They just put the new Hard Rock Seminole Casino and Hotel in Broward County. That is an incredibly large building. So there's a lot going on as far as huge investments in the Miami area that isn't happening in other areas. That when people think about moving to Florida, they're thinking Spring Hill, they're thinking Fort Myers, they're thinking Naples or Venice or Sarasota. But Miami is really where the big money is going. For all the huge investments are kind of pushing towards that area, and these big projects that are going into Miami are kind of a sign that, hey, we're here to stay, and there's a lot more real estate investment, huge projects. That's a lot of money going into Miami. So Miami may become a much more attractive area for American people, especially those looking to have good real estate investments in the state of Florida. So number 10 is financial education. The immigrants that came from other countries, a lot of them have had to become U.S. citizens. Before they're like, oh, I'm a permanent resident, it doesn't matter. Now they're like, oh, this is scary, we're going to become a U.S. citizen. Hey, I got scared and I became a U.S. citizen. Before I was a permanent resident, it didn't really matter to me to be a U.S. citizen. Now a lot of us are like, wait, we need to become U.S. citizens. And what's happened in Miami is that the immigrant groups have kind of smartened up, and they've become more financially smart. It's almost like somebody picked up a Dave Ramsey episode and translated it into Spanish and put it on Telemundo. I know in Fort Myers, Florida, all those used car lots that were on Palm Beach Boulevard are closing down because they don't have victims. Oops, I mean buyers anymore for their used cars at 70% what they're actually worth. Too many immigrants were just victims of used car lots, credit cards, and of course rent to own, rent properties. A lot of Hispanic people have really, which is like a majority of Miami area, have become more financially educated, and they're learning, hey, we got to talk about retirement, we got to talk about 401k, we got to talk about owning property. They're just becoming more financially educated than when they first came to the United States and said, me voy a comprar un home, herman, and I gotta go, Shane, to go with my home, herman. And I really don't know if the mix of Venezuelans and Colombians and people from other countries have kind of helped educate the majority of other Latin American people. Because there's a lot of countries in Latin America where, investing and financing are part of the economy. And then there's other places like Cuba where a gold chain and a Hummer are part of the economy. And we have really had to learn how to prioritize ourselves. And a lot of people are doing it right. I'm not saying that there aren't people out in the suburbs living way outside their means. A lot of people in this country are. But the influx of people from other countries have really educated people, and they've become a lot smarter about how they spend their money, which was really what was holding down poor people. The only thing that holds down poor people is not how much money they make, it's what they spend their money on. And if your money's going to rent and car loans, then 80% of the money you make disappears right in front of you. So overall, Miami is a much better place than it was in the past. It's sad to see a lot of the cultural aspects, music, and food is still there. That's the best thing about Miami. If you like eating good food, you can't go wrong with Miami. So if you're considering moving to Florida, don't be afraid to look at Dade County and Broward County. Now, recently, Broward County actually has higher crime rates. Now, there's a lot of stuff on the media, a lot of misinformation, but the Florida Law Enforcement Agency, whatever, department, they have a website, and you're going to realize that Broward County and Pasco County actually have the worst crime in the state. Broward County is really a suburb of Miami, and Pasco County is really a suburb of Tampa. So a lot of the crime has been pushed to the suburbs, and the city centers have become a lot safer and a lot cleaner. And that's just a change that's going on now in Florida. And you have to be really careful because some of the suburbs, like I said, Pasco County and Broward County, have more crime than the actual bigger city they're attached to. In some inner city areas like Little Haiti, Alapata, Overtown, Liberty City, Model City, places that used to have a bad reputation are actually better than some of the places pushing towards the suburbs like West Hialeah, which, you know, in the past was better, but there's just a change in what's better and what's worse, and the city centers are becoming more attractive, I guess, and gentrification's there in Miami. So keep that in mind if you're considering moving to Miami. Maybe you haven't even considered Miami. Maybe you think Miami was just this crime-ridden place that it was 10 years ago, but it's not like that today anymore. You don't need to know Spanish anymore to live there. That's great. The restaurants, Cuban, Colombian, Dominican, Puerto Rican, blah, 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 whatever. There's so much food and culture in Miami to absorb and just to keep you busy. And it's so affordable. It's really cheaper than other places. Now, I will warn you, if you're moving to Miami, real estate is expensive. Cost of living is expensive too. Restaurants are cheaper, but there's so many restaurants that you're going to end up eating out more than you would in a place like Naples or Venice or Sarasota, where there's not as much fun stuff to do. By the way, in Naples, I can go to a restaurant and spend between $70 to $120 for two people. Is that a Toyota? Hold on, man. That's funny right there. If you missed that Toyota, you missed it. All right. But in Naples, I can spend $120 in a restaurant, and it's garbage. It really is for two people, right? In Miami, you can have these amazing meals for $30, $40, and they have stuff from Spain, Portugal, Argentinian steakhouses. You can really eat a lot in Miami. And even though it's more affordable, you're going to do a lot more of it because there's so much more to do. And you're not going to need to know Spanish to do it. Like I said, ever since that incident at the Taco Bell that went viral, a lot of companies have really started to put English-speaking people at the front of their businesses. It may not be the case with mom and pop places, but actually most big companies have said, and even like restaurants that are good or very fancy and nice, they're putting people that speak English. And they're not ignorant, they're not stupid. They're figuring out that they're losing a lot of money by not catering to the English-speaking customer. They should have figured that out a long time ago. And a lot of the people that own those restaurants now are actually the kids and grandkids, and they speak English. So yes, you do not need Spanish as much in Miami, and a lot of businesses are realizing we're losing a lot of business by not catering to English-speaking people. I mean, other than Hialeah, which is a suburb of Miami, Hialeah does not seem like it's going to learn English anytime soon. Even though the restaurants there, the bigger, better ones, are starting to tell their customers you got to know English. But it seems like that's a place where people are just like, you know what, man, I'm going to keep my gold chain and my helmet, no me estás molestando, because maybe tomorrow I'm going to die and I never have the opportunity to wear a gold chain and have a Hummer. But if you get to live to 80 years old, then you're a burden to society. I mean, the city of Miami is like Pitbull's career. He started off on a street corner talking about, I'm going to sell some dope, and now he's in a business suit, international businessman. And that's what Miami has done. Miami went from like on a street corner with nothing to, hey, we're actually here. A lot of people have a really messed up thinking about what Miami is about. I've heard people say some outrageous things about Miami because all they know about Miami is what they saw 20 years ago or what they're watching on TV. And Miami is doing really well. Even the minorities, Cubans and Haitians and Jamaicans and definitely Venezuelans, everybody is doing really well economically, living at large. Actually, some of the people in Miami are living better than those people. I mean, those people who are making ignorant comments about Miami and how it's backwards and all that, some of the people, most of the people in Miami area, are actually living better than the ignorant people making those comments because they're misinformed and they have a prejudice against Miami that is totally outdated and wrong. Miami is really going places. It's really cleaning up. It's really starting to be a place to invest money in real estate, and it hasn't lost its culture. It has to a degree, but you know, with that, it's kind of like a trade-off. You're giving away a lot of your culture, but you're getting a lot of improvements. So, but the music and the food and all the good stuff is still there. The good times, the sunshine, it's all there. And if you're thinking about Florida and you haven't considered the Miami area, look into Homestead if you like the country lifestyle. Not the city of Homestead, but more towards like the countryside of Homestead. Hollywood seemed like a really nice place. I think the only real bad thing you can say about Miami is the cost of living, and especially real estate, is very high, and employment is very competitive. There's a lot of people offering services, and also you can say about Miami that the traffic is horrible. That's probably the worst thing Miami has going for it, is the traffic. So it's getting safer. It's becoming a better place to invest, and maybe it's a place you could see yourself in the future, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying all the good things Miami has to offer, and hopefully it keeps improving and never loses its real culture.